Okay, let's turn up the volume. Okay, so everyone can still hear me? Everything good?
Aaron,
Yes,
is that a shadow on your whiteboard?
that is my very impressive.
Squid?
Move those. That's my very impressive jellyfish light. Glad you
Oh,
noticed.
okay. Because it
We have
puts
to
a
edit
big
all this.
shadow. Okay, I didn't know what it was. Like,
I'm,
wow.
partic-
Okay.
I'm particularly proud of this because I got it for Christmas. And
Ah,
usually I'm on the naughty list, but this year I was on the nice list and I got a present.
okay.
Okay, send me the video. I'll edit all that out.
Good, thanks.
Okay, ready to start now? Three, two, one. Okay, welcome everybody and happy Sabbath. It's nice to be back with IPR. Hope you're all well. We just watched Elder Parminder, and there wasn't too much of a break, so I probably won't keep you too long. But first of all, I thought I'd just do a quick recap of the last few weeks. You know the rules, shout out, ask questions, anything you need. So I was teaching November the 5th, as you know, in the initiative. And then the two main points I had for November 5th was November 5th was the only date where the people were doing anything. And so it was the only day that I thought people could receive the Mark of the Beast test at the Mark of the Beast waymark. So I was convinced that November 5th was correct because no one else had that element. And the other one was November 5th was the whole of America. July 18th was half. So I felt that those were my two strongest points, and then there were some other points as well. Then in February in France, Elder Terry moved the Mark of the Beast test from the Mark of the Beast waymark to the loud cry, which then takes away really my main proof, evidence, whatever, my main argument. And then also around the same time, I think, they said the King of the North is only half of America. It's just the Republican Party. And we changed that as well. So at that stage, I thought, all right, I quit. I'll drop November 5th. I won't teach it anymore, which means I'm July 18th. So I studied July 18th. I asked lots of questions. I had people helping me answering questions. Then I tried to start presenting it and talking about it. And I'm terribly sorry, but I couldn't sustain it. I couldn't defend it. Can't defend July 18th. So I'm not going to be teaching that. And I just started teaching that triple application of prophecy, what we used to call the three Romes. And the conclusion of that particular perspective of that study was that Daniel 12:1 will be the end of the Ukraine war. So any questions so far? Well, I think. Okay, so
Wait, uh, did you say like Daniel 12:1 will be the end of Ukraine war? That's like goal of the studies.
that last part, Daniel 12:1, end of Ukraine war, and then what did you say?
Like that's like you're studying toward that.
That's what we studied last time I spoke. Am I correct? Is my memory correct? Anyone else remember that? Was I dreaming?
Okay.
Was that based on Arion's study too?
Yes.
Yes.
Should I do a
Yeah.
quick 10-minute recap of that? Just a quick one.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks.
Maybe if that's what we're going to talk about. Okay. So we had, it was always called the three Romes. So it would have been pagan Rome, papal Rome, and modern Rome. But as this is just a recap, I'm not going to call it the three Romes because in our time, from now on, we know Rome has nothing to do with end time prophecy. It is the counterfeit church still, but it has no social or political power. So I'm just going to call it maybe the three King of the Norths or something like that. So we've got pagan. This is taken from Daniel 8:9. See if I got it. Okay, I may as well do it like a class actually. What would be the first or any of these dates and waymarks? You don't need paper. So Syria. Anyone remember the date? BC, Syria.
63.
63, I think, goes here.
I couldn't remember. Okay.
That's all right.
64?
So we're moving in 64 BC. And in the words of Daniel 8:9, that would be the east. So what would this be? 63 BC. What was next? So the king of the north takes down 3 territories.
I was thinking 63 was the glorious land,
Yes.
but then there's also 61.
So you've got, in the words of Daniel 8:9, the pleasant land, which is the glorious land, 63.
31.
31, active. And that would be the east, the pleasant land, and the south, which was Egypt. So the king of the north takes down 3 territories before it rules the world supremely. So it rules, how long does it rule for on this line?
A time or 360 years.
Good. Rules for a time, 360 years, which brings you to what date?
330?
Good. And that's when we move to the papal line. We may as well draw that one out. You have, I've got it in my notes, but I can't remember the dates for this one. So we move to 330 AD when papal Rome starts to take over from pagan Rome. So do you remember the order? You know, the 3 horns that are plucked up?
Heruli, Vandals, and Goths or Ostrogoths.
Okay, I think it is that. Let me check because I'm not too sure.
But I can't give you the years.
Neither can I. Let's see what I've got here. Okay. So I've got Heruli, then Vandals, then Ostrogoths. That's what you said, isn't it? Heruli, Vandals, Ostrogoths. Okay, 493. 534. And 538. So the king of the north takes down 3 geographic areas before it rules the world supremely. And how many times does it rule for on that line?
Times, time, and half a times, which is 1260.
Good. And then it comes to its end. Okay. Whee. Pagan, papal. I guess I have to put modern now, because is what I want to avoid anyway. So this would be Daniel 11, 40 to 45. So what are the dates?
So we have 1989,
Good.
and that's the King of the South, we say.
Good. Yeah.
And then National Sunday Law, Worldwide
Mhm.
Sunday Law.
And then it rules the world supreme. Until when?
Second Advent.
Is it just me and Alyssa in this meeting, or is there anyone else? Come on, speak up. Usually you're all, you know.
My anxiety is going crazy. No one else is talking, so I have to fill in the gaps.
I
We
know,
are-
once you've started, you can't just back out then, because then it's all you. So that's
we
okay.
are listening and following.
Sorry, say again?
We are listening and following.
Yes, good, good. Okay. We're learning along. And I did want to just rush through it as well, because it is just a recap. So, Okay, is that everything? So we said internal victory for the King of the North, because the King of the North enters also into the glorious land, which means an internal defeat for the King of the South. And then at the Universal Sunday Law, we get the external of those. So for the King of the South, internal would be some defeats for Putin inside of Russia. And I know Elder Terry says that was Navalny, the death of Navalny. And external would be outside of Russia. Really, the only theater there is Ukraine. So he said at the end of the Ukraine war would line up with Daniel 12:1. So that's how we got there, remember. Okay, any thoughts or questions before we move on? So that's Daniel 12:1, external, then on Ukraine war. And then we said war seems to end in stages. So if we're trying to nail down when this happens, and I don't know if we'll be able to foretell, am I behind on any studies? Because I don't always keep up. I'm not up to speed with what Elder Parminder's been teaching or Elder Terry. I'm a bit behind. Last time I spoke, I think someone said that we're past the increase of knowledge. Is that correct?
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
I think there was a study that Elder Terry had made January 20th, the increase of knowledge.
January 20th was the increase of knowledge. So I guess maybe we were all in Concord. No, the initiative hadn't even started. What did she say Concord was? Does anyone remember? How were we in Concord?
I thought we weren't there yet.
That's what I thought. And then I think the last time I spoke, was it Gloria? I don't know. Somebody said that Elder Terry's teaching that we are past the increase of knowledge. And I asked then, how are we in Concord? So can anyone confirm that we're past the increase of knowledge? First of all, anyone else? Second witness.
I would say, like in our recent studies about deep and dark mega, she seemed to be like we are still at the increase of knowledge, trying to unpack 2024 and how the events that like formalization, like how are they going to look like?
Yes.
Okay, so who did you say is, so Emmanuel, you said someone is saying we're still in the increase of knowledge now, did you say?
Yeah, elitary in
Oh,
our on deep mega and dark mega.
okay, so it wasn't back in January, it's now
Yeah,
during the term.
But we're trying to work it out. We're still
Okay,
working.
so basically, have we reached the increase of knowledge today or not? Are we still trying to work out when it is in the future?
Still working it out is how I understood it. Because we're not in Concord. We still have all the different studies going on.
I agree.
That's
Not
what
Concord.
but that's what I thought, but I'm trying to figure out what Elder Terry has already taught. So I know there's a few people that really keep up well with Elder Terry's studies. Does anyone know what she has actually taught about the increase of knowledge?
That the purpose of the increase of knowledge is to understand the Sunday law.
Okay, but
Yeah.
what about a date for the increase of knowledge?
There is no date.
Okay,
I have
Okay.
a question.
The
I have a
increase of
question.
knowledge, doesn't the increase of knowledge have to pertain to what will be the formalization, what will then be the test at Daniel 12:1?
yeah, it's forward looking. That's the way Tess always taught it. But now we seem to be teaching that it's backward looking. So that's just another thing I don't understand.
So Daniel 12:1 is the waymark, then the increase of knowledge has to be something to do with Daniel 12:1, right?
That's the way Tess taught it. But I just heard and have also heard in the past that this is an increase of knowledge on the National Sunday Law. And there's not one other single model that does that. Not one.
No, because that increase of knowledge and formalization was prior. That's the way I understand it.
You've got an unsealing of a message here. And it's unsealed in the future, obviously. Then you get an increase of knowledge on that message. Then it gets formalized, and then you're tested on it here. And what you're tested on is this formalization.
So isn't she saying that? So the unsealing was the image of the beast. And so now the increase of knowledge is that unsealed message.
Okay, if that's correct, so I'm confused because this increase of knowledge, the way Elder Tess taught it, would be on Daniel 12:1, the worldwide Sunday law. So if that's what's being taught, then that works in my mind. But if we're saying we're in this increase of knowledge because we're starting to understand 2024 national Sunday law,
Right.
then it doesn't quite fit the model. But don't forget that there's not really. Anyway.
What about the model when Elder Tess was teaching the Midnight Cry in 18, giving light backwards on 2014 Sunday law?
So then we would have 2014, 2016, 2018, 2019 shut door. So the unsealing was fractals. (2016) was Acts 27. 2018 was two streams. And 2019 was feminism. Is Acts 27 or two streams telling you anything about 2014?
No.
So you could say in 2018, even though it's two streams, that's looking forwards to feminism, Elder Tess was unpackaging the Sunday Law 2014 Cambridge Analytica. But the problem with that is that model is unique because Elder Jeff silenced Parminder, basically sabotaged the message. So Elder Parminder and the whole of the movement didn't get to work on it when they should have been doing it, formalizing it down here.
And then
I
I
don't
guess
think
we
it
could
would
also,
I don't think it would have been that hard. If Elder Tess could do it, I believe God could lead Elder Parminder to do it, or whoever. And the conclusion in 2018, so we had fractals in 2014, so we could have known that it's just the Sunday law for the priests and not be expecting a full-blown Sunday law in America, even though we were still thinking it would be a Sunday movement. But what Elder Tess told us in 2018 was that it's Cambridge Analytica. And I think Parminder would have been able to do that. Figured out that it's a right-wing movement, etc. Everything that we know.
so then what about the light that we didn't have foreknowledge on Raphia or Panium per se until afterwards either.
Specifically, Raphia and Panium came in October, November, December 2016. So does that match with what you're saying?
I guess the specifics of what it was, I still, when some people are presenting about Panium, there's still uncertainty about what exactly it was. It wasn't anything that was taught ahead of time. This is exactly what Panium is going to be. Elder
Well, where's
Tess.
Raphia and Panium? Because that's forward-looking.
Oh, you're right.
And they're on the big line.
On the line that you drew there, yeah. I guess I was just.
So there's another witness that it's forward-looking.
Yeah.
And I think it was Brazil. I've got a feeling it was that 3-hour meeting I did. And it went on for 3 hours because I did all the different increased knowledge formalization tests, I think on a few different lines, and every single one of them is forward. Now, don't get me wrong. Pick a year, any year. We'll be looking back at 9/11, East Wind, or we might be studying 1989 and learning more. Elder Tess did a lot of work on 1996, and she put all sorts of things in there. Fox News, CNN established, the internet, whatever that was, the first internet, militias, all sorts of things. She even went back into the Millerite time and studied that, but that's not the repeating pattern. The repeating pattern are these specific doctrines. So if you're going to say we're at the increase of knowledge, then the movement has to be in concord over something. And we should have an increase of knowledge on Daniel 12:1. I would be all right to say, yeah, it's the increase of knowledge is that Daniel 12:1 is the end of the war in Ukraine, for example. So I'm not
Hi, Aaron.
Hey.
How are you doing? Happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath.
You finished your thought?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. I don't believe there's a movement consensus of being at that way mark. However, there are fractions within the movement that stated their belief that they're at or past that way mark. I agree with Emmanuel. That's why I wrote my comment. I did heard Elder Terry mentioned that the external is the deep versus dark MAGA, the increase of knowledge. So I'm going along with that, but I haven't heard anything outside of that.
So Troy, are you saying Elder Terry has taught that the increase of knowledge is in the past?
That would be my understanding, because that's the past now.
I think that's what someone said last time I spoke, but I never trust my memory.
So just to support Troy, what Troy said, So Elder Terry said that we have to still unravel about the Sunday law waymark at the increase of knowledge or at this point. And she did mention deep versus dark MAGA, deep being Steve Bannon and dark is the billionaires. So with this tariff issue, she is sort of projecting also to the worldwide Sunday law with the globalization issues.
Okay.
So she's touching a wide spectrum there, the increase of knowledge.
That sounds good. That's, yeah.
Yes, I agree with Gloria and Emmanuel. And we are in the agitation of the worldwide Sunday law. So unpacking the national Sunday law, which is the increase of knowledge to look forward to the worldwide Sunday law, is how I'm understanding it.
Okay. Okay. So Troy, Gloria, I think Emmanuel say Elder Terry's taught that the increase of knowledge is in the past. I think it's probably just semantics, and I probably get a bee in my bonnet about.
She's saying unraveling. You know, let's talk more about the waymark so we can go forward. So she's touching the past, wanting to go forward.
So she's opening up more information, right? Increasing our knowledge of MAGA, which is writing the seventh king, right?
And January 20th, with all the executive orders, do give a glimpse into what the worldwide Sunday law is going to be.
That's good. I do agree with all of that. I think it's just the way it was worded, maybe just to me, that we're increase of knowledge because we're unraveling the national Sunday law. We're looking in our increase of knowledge, we're looking backwards at 2024, and that wouldn't be the way I would word it, because increase of knowledge doesn't look backwards. But as a movement, we should be looking back at the Sunday law.
So how do you open an unsealing then? So if there's an unsealing of the message, there's not a lot of information in the beginning, right?
Right.
So then we get more information about that unsealed message,
Okay.
right?
Let me do what I did for Brazil.
Sorry if I'm not following you.
No. This is great, because if there's questions, then we should iron them out. I guess I need the ball. Anyway, I just wanted to summarize, so I can take that away. That's nothing new.
I'm actually really glad that Kathy or somebody asked about the jellyfish, because I actually thought that you had this like indelible ink splotch on your board wouldn't come off.
Yeah, there's this evil shadow thing going on.
Okay, that's not very clean. But let's just take, what do you think? Let's do okay, so 1989 is the unsealing, and that's line upon line. That's Jeff literally sitting on his own in his kitchen with a biro, in those days a pen and a paper. So repeat of history. 1991, Daniel 11:40 to 45. He's writing a series of 12 articles for the ministry he works for. And then they all get formalized into one book, Time of the End magazine. Okay, which is the formalization. So here you've got first, well, the word first, yeah, we'll just say first word repeated. It's not technically correct because Islam is restrained. But either way, first word repeats. First word is the east wind hurts the army of Rome in that sense. Okay. So this unsealing tells you that history repeats. Okay, which is what happens 2001. Daniel 11 tells you who the army of Rome is. The army of Rome is America. And Time at the End of the Magazine just formalizes that. So when you get tested here, you get tested on this formalization, which tells you that Islam will first hurt the army of Rome. You can get that from the repeat of history and Time of the End magazine. Does that make sense?
Yes.
2009, 2012. So we've got 2520. 2009 is the 2520, Elder Parminder's 25 hour series on the 2520, which is the key which unlocks time.
The unsealing for 2001.
I can't remember. I got a feeling. I'm seeing for 2000. I can't remember. Can anyone? In 2001.
I don't recall being taught there was anything unsealed in 2001 internally. Externally, I remember 2001 having the something with the Jesuits, the SDA doctrine of, oh dear.
Was it I don't think this is it, but was it 2003 when all those Adventist pastors, including then Elder Jeff, were all called together and debated Daniel 11, and then the Adventist Church rejects that message? Is that 2003? I don't know if that's it because it's not 2001.
I'm not too sure, but I just checked my notes and some notes which somebody else sent me a few weeks ago on this, and there's nothing at 2001. So I don't think Elder Tess put that in place. Spiritual formation.
She did.
That's what I was thinking.
She did mention that.
She did mention that, but I don't know if she said that was the unsealing. Because as I think I might have said before, in any given year, we're studying a bunch of different things. It doesn't make it all the unsealing. For example, we're studying the stone of Daniel 2 and the judgment of the living. That's not an unsealing or increase of knowledge. They're very specific doctrines.
I think Tyler's correct. He wrote in the chat that it was 2520, which I do remember being put at the unsealing for 2001 because that was the knowledge that came out of that dispensation.
You do also have in the 2520 embedded in the charts that the east wind is listed on there.
So the 2520 was very first discovered by Dwayne Dewey in the spring of 2004. I was emailing with Elder Jeff, I think it was March or April, and he said there's another time prophecy that's been discovered in Leviticus 26. Me being me, just picked up my Bible, read Leviticus 26 and typed back, no, Jeff, you're wrong, there's no time prophecy in there. That's how simple everything was to me. But the 2520 was only rediscovered in 2004. But I think Elaine just now said something interesting. We were studying the old paths. It was all about the old paths back in 2001 and the charts. So I wouldn't mind putting the charts as the unsealing because the 2520 is on there, but we just haven't discovered it yet because it's just being unsealed. So I quite like that idea.
And the charts point to the east wind.
Yes, they've got both of them on there.
Right.
They got the three woes or the two woes at least. Yes.
Two, yeah.
And
So the
and the two
2520 looks back to the charts then.
Looks no, the 2520 looks forward to time setting because
No,
it's
I
the
mean,
key.
right, but it also had the east wind and the charts. You see what I'm saying? I'm
Oh,
really,
the east wind. Yeah, I see what you mean. It gives you
yeah. So
Yeah.
if it's unsealed, it's not understood, and therefore we need to take time to understand that unsealed message. Is Austin, Concord, Exeter, right? I mean,
The trouble with that is if you put the charts there and you're
mhm.
going to say the east wind, then the east wind happened there. It's not looking back. It's actually in real time. So maybe you could look at the chart in 2001 and say, now we understand 9/11, but we understand, yeah. So
He was
No.
using it, wasn't he using the chart initially for the daily to defend the daily? And
yeah.
then, but the east wind happens, which is kind of interesting because it leads me more to my study to later. But you're not sure.
Kathy's trying to speak, but her volume is low.
Well,
What's
let me
that?
up. Okay, I increased my volume. So I'm not saying that I'm sorry, I'm really dragging this out, and I seem to be the only one that's not getting it. If a message, so we have a message, it's unsealed at 2001. And I remember Elder Tess saying that when the message comes, we don't understand it. So the increase of knowledge is an increase of the understanding of that message that was unsealed.
And the message is eventually in that dispensation is time. So 2001 would be like an unsealing of a message of time that we don't understand, that eventually comes to the 2520. And what is that we don't understand? We don't understand the significance of the east wind and the
Right.
third woe.
So does that help? Because 2001 is a test and
It's
an
both,
unsealed.
right? A test and an unsealing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that helps.
Because, we say in 1798, Miller is the first angel arrives, nobody knows him, he's not saying anything, and then we get an increase of knowledge in 13, 14, or 15, whenever he does his study.
1818.
Thank you, Gloria.
So yes, the little book of Daniel was unsealed at the time of the end, Ellen White says, but nothing was happening. Miller wasn't even a Christian, he wasn't studying. But in 1818, he starts to study. And then in 1833, gets his credentials. Or sometimes we say 1816 to 1818, 1831 to 1833, he gets his credentials. And then this is all day for a year. And then August the 11th, 1840, tests you on day for a year.
Right. Okay.
So
even though Miller's not there, an event or events do occur that become understood later.
yes, but again, the messages in the repeating pattern are specific. So this is 1A, and that's Miller. So you can't say this is the other guy, Joseph Wolfe, or there was some things going on around that time. Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
People started to be stirred up, but you got to look to Miller, really.
Miller would be like the increase of knowledge.
And it was the same here. This was feminism.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes.
Hey, it's Tyler.
Tyler.
So I know we've talked about this extensively, but I think you're right in that the message that is being seen there or unsealed is pointing forward. But take 1798 for example. The message that unsealed there is not the message of 1798. It's the message of something that's going to happen in the future, which is 1844. The cleansing of the temple. And so that message is pointing forward to that. But Miller or Jeff, whether you're looking at 1989 or 1798, they don't understand the event that they just passed by. So they have to, like you're saying, use the terminology of unpack. They're going to unpack the event that just happened that is retrospective and prospective, or, looking forward. And so they're going to start unpacking, or Miller's going to start unpacking 1798 that helps him understand where he is and some of these things that are going on. But all of that is pointing forward to 1844, or if in this case we can just say, I guess, August 11th, if we want to keep that structure, but pointing forward. And one of the problems, or one of the things that makes it tricky, is that when we come to our waymarks other than 1989 or 1798, there's always an overlap of a message being tested and a message being unsealed that can be confusing. And I think what we see is that there was a prediction of the Sunday law. Terry made that prediction, and that was the test that was happening right there. Are you going to accept her message or accept that message? And then the thing that is unsealed points us forward to, like you said, Daniel 12:1. But you can't get away from the fact that you need to unpack the event you just passed by, because you really don't understand it, even though you predicted, just like Tess with Raffia. We had predictions of Raffia, but we didn't understand Raffia till we passed it. Even though we predicted that this thing was going to happen, and then we understood it more after we have passed it, and then it all points forward to us to the next waymark.
I agree. And that is what Elder Terry's doing, is unpacking the event that passed, which will then have us look forward because we're in the agitation of the worldwide Sunday law.
So I agree fully, but that's not the repeating pattern. And I think you said that, Tiny. So back over here, Elder Tess is unpacking Raphael. But the increase of knowledge is the Apis bull, which is going to tell you about Trump and the manosphere and patriarchy. And this
Exactly. It's all pointing you forward, like you're saying. I agree with you that the repeating pattern points you forward, but weaved into that is the fact that you do need to unpack the thing that you just passed by. But technically, like you're saying, you're looking forward to Daniel 12:1.
I agree.
The test was putting January 6th in the message. She was looking back at 1996 in order to unpack that. When she put Cambridge Analytica and everything else she did, she looked back at the Millerized time, in God we trust. All of that, yeah. I'll just do one more, just as I've written it out already. So, I keep doing that. Okay, so the unsealing on the destruction of Jerusalem, nothing's happening. 63, you've got woe, woe, woe to the four winds. You've got the guy walking up and down the streets of Jerusalem and the clouds like chariots and all of that. 66 is Titus. And then Titus goes away, but now you know what it looks like. You know what the destruction looks like, formalization, agitation. And that's what you're tested on. When you saw the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, did you flee to the mountains? Okay, so you're tested on that. It's all forward looking. Does that make sense?
The other thing that was placed there was, and I'm just going off of, actually Christine was trying to post in the chat, the outline where Elder Tess put at that waymark, at that test waymark, that what was to happen was a change of behavior was to be produced based on that message.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Okay.
May you summarize your point?
Oh,
Because I'm a little confused. Just from all the dialogue and discussion, I kind of got lost. So may you summarize your point of what you're teaching us in your study?
So I think it's quite a minor point, actually. The way I heard it was in the last few weeks, we're at the increase of knowledge. I don't have it here. We're at the increase of knowledge because we're looking back and unpacking the National Sunday Law in 2024. And I don't mind saying we're at the increase of knowledge, and I don't mind saying we need to look back at the National Sunday Law and unpack it in 2024. But the increase of knowledge looks forward. So in my black and white brain, I can't understand why you would say, we know we're at the increase of knowledge because we're getting an increase of knowledge on a past waymark. Because the increase of knowledge is future. I probably confused you more. Does that make sense? Should I try and say it again?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to have clarity on your point. Thank you.
But it doesn't change anything because I'm fine that we're past the increase of knowledge, and I'm fine that we need to look back and understand the National Sunday Law. So in that sense, it's nothing to worry about.
I have a question. It may be a little bit aside from what you're talking, but with this deep and dark MAGA, globalization versus the, making US the most powerful nation of the world. We started talking in our group in East Coast Forum about the role of Islam at the end of the world. And you have mentioned when you were standing for November 5th, how they were weakened. And I know Elder Terry talked about what's happening in the Middle East as a distraction. So are you still thinking that they'll have a powerful role between close observation to the second advent, or what are your thoughts now? Because there's been lots of twists and turns, like papacy is good now, Trump is good.
Yeah. So I haven't heard anything different. That this is just a harbinger of Daniel 12. So I'm still thinking the United States, the army of Rome has to be killed by the east wind at Daniel 12. I don't know how it's going to happen.
So in our conversation in our East Coast Forum, this conflict that's happening with deep versus MAGA, how globalization is going to be, fight against constantly with the tariff war, and US just may kill itself, just go down with all this, changes in policies, wrong changes that will cause harm to its people and the nation, instead of being attacked by Islam per se,
Okay. But it has to be the east wind because it's the third woe.
But we also have to look at, things symbolically, right? Is east wind, like Cyrus, we call him the king of the east or the king of the north, right? So it has different symbols. And I was thinking east could be also China at the end. They're just as strong as US.
So symbols can have more than one meaning. And the king of the north shares a lot of symbols with Islam. But the triple application of prophecy, when you apply it to the woes, says Islam first hurts, then kills the army of Rome. So it has to be Islam. Because that second woe is the Ottomans. And the first woe is the Saracens and then the Ottomans. So it has to be Islam in my mind. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Maybe I'm wrong.
I have a lot, but I'll save them for now while I think through what you're saying, what's being said.
It doesn't have to be a nation state like Iran, Iraq, Syria. That kills the army of Rome. This was terroristic, so this could also be terrorism, and it could be cyber or what do they call it? The different types of warfare that they have now. But don't forget, you've got now. We say the King of the North rules the world supremely. And we also say the East Wind kills the army of Rome. So I don't know how that will look.
Also have it's four winds. The four winds are let loose.
Yeah. So you've got Russia, South Wind,
North.
and all the East, yeah. The West, I guess, is just NATO. I don't know. So, but withdrawal.
If you were supposed to see it in 1989, that line upon line demonstrating that history repeats, and then what happens at 9/11 is pointing back to history of the first and second woe. So history repeated, and understanding triple application of Bible prophecy, that the first part of the third woe is the repeating of the first woe, if I said that right, the hurt, and that's a harbinger that points to the close of probation. So wouldn't the information in this dispensation also be pointing to that repeating of history to show us what's going to happen at Daniel 12:1? And we're also unpacking why it's going to happen at Daniel 12:1.
Sounds good to me. I would agree. The only caveat, the only thought would be, don't forget, we've been saying increased knowledge and formalization are specific doctrines. But in every year, we're looking at all the doctrines. Like I said, here we were looking at judgment of the living, the stone of Daniel 2, which is nothing to do with 2014 on the other line. So I don't know if the increase of knowledge and formalization here, is it going to be on Islam, or is it going to be on the universal Sunday law, or because there's a few, or is it going to be, yeah.
Would you look at the end and the beginning? To know the beginning, to know the end, you have to look at the beginning. Would that take you back to the reform line beginning at 1989, which opens up line upon line, or the repetition of history? So at the end, you need to understand the repetition of history.
For sure you do. You need to understand the repeat of history.
All right. I have a question to that too, Jackie. What Elaine just said, understanding of a repeat of history. What about Rome and the way Rome felt?
Yeah, if you could make an application.
Could it be economical? Economic.
You mean Daniel 12:1?
Yes.
It could be, if you're talking about the Islam killing the army of Rome, it could be economic.
Yes.
Is it called asymmetric warfare or something? Basically, it's not guns and bullets and bombs. It's like cyber attacks and stuff like that.
Bankruptcy of the United States with the economic problems with tariffs, and Donna in her comments is what I'm thinking of.
So anything could happen. That could well happen. But how would the east wind do that? Maybe they could, like.
It has to be, you made it pretty clear that it has to be involved with Islam.
Yes.
And it would be a combination, would it be a combination, chariots, ships, and horsemen, where you have military and economic strength being destroyed?
So that was the king of the north versus the king of the south.
Yeah,
That
okay.
wasn't Islam versus the King of the North.
You're right, correct. Okay, yeah. And just looking at what is destroyed. Is it both that are destroyed? But you're right.
But the seventh
Mm.
kingdom is reigning supremely during that time. So no matter
Yeah.
what happens, it can't. The seventh kingdom is still able to rule.
Yeah.
And other nations are bowing to the seventh kingdom.
Yes,
Yes.
very much. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so one thing you probably do see here is that there's conflicting symbology in that the King of the North is, like you said, it's strongest, but also dying at the same time. And so it would make sense that the strength and the death would be representing different things. So if you're going to say strength represents, just for an example, influence, or the death represents, like the ships of Tarshish falling, and so that's what economic or something like that. So it wouldn't be. I don't think, like we say with the King of the South, it's not a complete, killing of the King of the South. It is a influential killing, you know what I mean? And so they're probably pointing at different symbols, the strength and the death, probably wouldn't be in the same aspect.
I was thinking that a few minutes ago. If the East Wind attacks the United States under Donald Trump, he is going to give a very strong response. So he's going to flex the United States muscles. So I think it could maybe happen in that way. Does that
Okay,
sound right?
I'm going to throw another one out there that's not sure, but going back to what I've been looking into and looking at 1798 and the literal understanding that they took that the King of the North and the King of the South was Turkey or Egypt and Turkey, and the him was Napoleon. So you had the East Wind factions in 1798. And in our history, could you then take 1989 because they're all three there. The East Wind is there, the King of the North is there, and the King of the South is there at 1989. And they carry
Yeah,
through both lines. Except the Millerite line carries the east wind through, and so does this line carry the east wind through, all the way through.
I think that's fine. I think Elder Pomin has done something like that, didn't he? Was it
Yes, when you said
May
Uriah Smith was right.
19? Yeah, May or something. And he did you remember 1798. Oh, I can't remember. He
Uriah
did
Smith
this.
was right, and that the King of the South goes against Napoleon, and the King of the North goes against Napoleon. Napoleon goes back to France, and that eventually creates the 10-year Syrian proxy war in their history.
Yeah, that's all I remember from that study.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Yes. 1831 to 33. And
Oh,
then
really?
1831 to 1833. No, on the other side. Yes, no. And then it's 1839 to 1841.
Thank you.
Right.
I remember now. Yeah. So yeah, I think what you said was perfectly reasonable. Okay, did I miss anything in the chat? Or any other thoughts? If not, it's still a bit early. So I wanted to. Does anyone know where we are on the peace deal? I know something happened this morning, which seems fairly significant. But it seems like Ukraine and Russia are both dragging their feet on certain aspects of the peace deal. Trump's just trying to push everything along, saying the US is just going to walk away from it if it's not done soon. High-level talks. And then this morning in Rome, I think Trump met face to face with Zelensky. And Zelensky said something like, that meeting could be historic. And Trump said it was a really good meeting, progress and all of that. And then said, Putin needs to, get moving on this. I think that was just this morning. So it seems like things are moving. So I'll ask your thoughts on the peace deal. But before I forget, if we're trying to look for an event, because wars end in stages, you would have the peace deal, and then you would have probably like a ceasefire, and then troops would start to pull back and go home. Peacekeepers would start to be arranged or arriving. Prisoner swaps would start happening, and then things like a demilitarized zone and all of that. So what stage of the end of the Ukraine war would you put Daniel 12:1? And someone mentioned to me, I think it was actually Ariane, said, well, August 11th, 1840 is a model, a prophetic model that we have for when one power in God's eyes collapses, is restrained or whatever. When they acquiesce power to another power. So when Russia actually acquiesces power to the King of the North, might be Daniel 12:1. So if we think about August 11th, 1840, what happened was the peace deal was signed. It was kind of a peace deal, but anyway, the contract was signed. And then the subsequent war and everything started on September the 11th, 1840. So it's backwards because that was the start of a war. So Turkey acquiesces power to the four great powers of Europe, and then war with Egypt starts. But in our time, the King of the South acquiesces power to the King of the North, and then the war ends. So I'm wondering if it's whenever the peace deal is signed would be that event for Daniel 12:1. With the caveat that I think I'd only be really confident to say we're at Daniel 12:1 if we see the east wind killing the army of Rome, however that looks. If you only see a peace deal signed next week, then nothing happens for 6 months, I'm going to be confused. Nothing happens with the east wind for 6 months, I'm going to be confused. Okay, any thoughts? So I'm thinking you need both. And usually all of our waymarks are in 1 year. This isn't 2001 and 2002. This isn't 1989 and 1990. So I'm thinking if peace deal is signed in 2025, you should see the east wind killing the army of Rome in 2025. If it happens 2 years later, something's probably gone a bit wrong in my mind, at least. Okay, that's all I've really got. Any thoughts or discussion, anything?
I'm trying to think of that with the peace deal being there. If that be the case, would that peace deal be something that obviously benefits the King of the North and diminishes the other two parties, but also riles up? You have all the four winds riled up in that peace deal with the severing of the ties with the European allies involved in that.
Yeah, would that match some, maybe lead to the four winds loosed or something? The four winds loosed, I don't mind if it happens in this history. I'm not saying it would have to happen at that
Yeah,
way.
I get that. Yeah, in that history, yeah.
Let's take that away. I think those two things would have to happen probably in the same year for me to really believe we're at Daniel 12:1. And I remain open. Could be wrong. Okay. I guess if there's nothing else, we could close. Shall I close in prayer? Mighty God in heaven, we thank you again for good friends and good fellowship and for this good message. And we pray you give us wisdom and insight as we enter into a serious time now. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.